Welcome to Room 9, the region's largest classroom. I am Mrs. Wright and I teach at Monroe Elementary in St. Charles. Today I will be teaching a reading lesson meant for second graders. But as always, everyone of all ages, learning abilities is welcome to learn with us. So we are learning about author's purpose this week. I hope you are having a wonderful week. I am really enjoying teaching about this topic. I am also having a really wonderful week. It's just been good to be in the holiday spirit. No matter what holidays you celebrate during this time, I think it's always a nice time to be together. And maybe that looks a little bit different this year, but you're still able to hopefully be with some people, whether it's in person or virtually, or maybe you have to start like a little new tradition this year. So let's go ahead and do some stretching. Oh, stretch all the way up and over. Over again. I need to go see a chiropractor for this little spot on my back. It feels really good when they get your like body back into alignment. So that will help me not feel like hurting back there. But anyway, that's beside the point of what we're doing today. Today, we will be able to analyze the author's purpose in fiction and nonfiction. We're finally getting to both genres today. Now, a little reminder that author's purpose is the reason the author has for writing. And we have learned, that when you're reading nonfiction, the purpose is either to inform, to explain, or describe. And the explain means the author is telling you how or why. To inform, the author gives you information about a topic. To describe, the author is telling you who, what, when, where, why, and might use the 5 senses to do so. And if you are looking at fiction, the author could also be writing to inform you, giving you information about a topic. They could be writing to persuade you. That means they're trying to get you to think, feel, act, or believe as they do. And then lastly, if you are reading fiction, the author's purpose might be to entertain you. And that means that the author wants you to just enjoy their writing. I love reading books where it's just meant to entertain. Like I think of like Harry Potter that I love to read. Like that's just meant to entertain me, right? Sometimes when I read articles online, the purpose is to persuade me. So this could be seen as mostly nonfiction, but sometimes you can have nonfiction writing that's trying to persuade, right? When you write about your opinions. All right, so we are going to read 2 different books today. One is fiction and one is nonfiction. And they have really great pictures in both of them. And we are going to figure out what the author's purpose is. And we're not just going to figure it out. We are going to analyze. Good. Let me grab a little sip of my water. Okay. Here we go. About Mammals, a guide for children. This book is written by Cathryn Sill, and it is being used with permission from Peachtree Publishing. So let's read the blurb. About Mammals is a thoughtful first glimpse into the world of nature for young children. In this easy-to-read, informative follow-up to the critically acclaimed book About Birds, author and teacher Cathryn Sill explains what mammals are, how they live, and what they do. I heard 2 words in there that come from this. Okay, let's go ahead and keep reading. About Mammals by Cathryn Sill. Mammals have hair. What animal is that? Yeah, it's a raccoon. We had raccoons in our trash can last week. They have thick fur, sharp quills. This is a porcupine. Quills are like big needles on porcupines. Or only a few whiskers. This guy's a walrus. Remember, all of these things that she's saying are about mammals, not just about what's pictured. Baby mammals drink from their mothers. Some mammals are born helpless. Others can move about on their own soon after they are born. Mammals may run, climb, swim, or fly. Mammals eat meat, plants, or both. They may live in cold, icy places, hot, dry deserts, or wet marshes. It is important to protect mammals where they live. Let's stop here for a second. We know that we're reading nonfiction, so we know that the purpose is either to inform, to describe, or explain. Inform, the author gives you information about a topic. Describe, the author is telling who, what, when, where, why, and might use the 5 senses to do so. And explain. The author is telling you how or why. Well, I don't really think the author is describing, really. I mean, they're telling us what mammals are like, but they're not saying why. They're not saying when. They are saying where, and they haven't really used the 5 senses. So I don't think that they're really describing. I do feel like they're probably informing. They're giving us very, very simple information on a topic, like where mammals live, what they look like, how they move. So that kind of makes me think maybe they are describing, but they didn't really use any 5 senses. Okay, let's keep going to see. Where were we? Here we go. It is important to protect mammals where they live. and that's it. So, these pages actually match everything in the picture. So like it says, plate 1, raccoon. So you go here to plate 1 and it says, hair in its different forms protect mammals in ways uniquely adapted for each species. Raccoons are found in each of the lower 48 states. And then plate 2, which is kind of like picture 2, says musk oxen. Then it says musk oxen live in the cold Arctic region. They have a thick outer coat of long guard hairs covering a dense undercoat that keeps them warm in frigid temperatures. So I really think that the author in this book, Cathryn Sill, wrote this to inform the readers about mammals. There's tons of information in this book in a very easy way. I think it's informed. What do you think? You agree with me? You think it's described? I know. I think it could be both. I think if it were described, there might be more with the 5 senses and more specific information on the who, what, when, where, why. So I think About Mammals was written to inform. Okay, now switching your brain over to fiction, and we are going to read this book, LuLa and the Sea Monster by Alex Latimer. This is being read with permission also from Peachtree Publishing. And remember that fiction books can be written to inform, to persuade, to try and make you think, feel, or act, believe as the author does, and then to entertain. The author wants the reader to enjoy their writing. Okay, here we go. LuLa and the Sea Monster. LuLa loves living by the beach, but soon her family must move out of their house to make room for a new highway. As LuLa counts down the days until she leaves, she makes friends with the most peculiar sea creature. He has a very big appetite. That means he likes to eat. Peculiar means odd, like weird or different. Can LuLa's new friend help save her home and the beach where they live? Okay, I'm excited for this book. Here we go. LuLa lived in an old house on the beach with her parents. She loved looking for things that washed up in the sand and watching the animals that lived in the rock pools. Washed up on the sand means that the waves like brought them in on the beach part and they stayed there. But none of that would last much longer. In a few days, LuLa and her family would have to move. High tide highway. No way. Save the beach. Their home was going to be torn down to make way for a huge highway that would run along the coast. Coast is like the edge of the beach. They wanted to put a highway all along the edge of the beach. Early one morning, LuLa packed some sandwiches and took her bucket and spade. She went for a long walk along the beach, combing for treasures while she still could. I think LuLa's a little sad. Further down the shore, she noticed a seagull snapping at something in a small rock pool. LuLa chased the seagull away. Then she scooped up the tiniest creature in her bucket. He curled around LuLa's finger, happy to have been rescued. "Look how little you are," said LuLa. "You're hardly bigger than a bean." "Oh, that's what I'll call you, Bean." Bean seemed much too small to look after himself in the deep, wide ocean. So LuLa put him in a larger rock pool with plenty of crevices to hide from hungry seagulls. We learned that word last week, crevices. Remember crevices? Remember, and I was like trying to show you the crevice and the ottoman, and I was like, oh man, the people at teaching room 9 are gonna be so mad at me because the camera was going everywhere. But the crevices are like little indentions in rocks or in land that things can hide in easily. She gave Bean a sandwich from her backpack, and Bean gobbled it up. LuLa spent the whole day with her new friend. "It's getting late," LuLa told Bean, "but I will be back tomorrow." Then she headed for home. LuLa woke up extra early the next morning, made 3 extra sandwiches, and hurried along the beach to see her new friend. But the tiny creature she had left in the rock pool, I think it's gone, had grown overnight. Now Bean was too big for the pool. LuLa would have to find him a new home. So she scooped Bean up in her bucket, though he hardly fit, and dragged the bucket to a larger pool. LuLa gave Bean all of the sandwiches she brought, even her own. LuLa stayed as long as she could, and then they played until sunset. Remember, sunset is when the sun goes down at nighttime. It was getting harder to say goodbye. The next day, LuLa packed all the food she could carry, stuffed it in a bedsheet, and dragged it to Bean's pool. Bean had grown even bigger. There was no way LuLa could carry him now. So LuLa lured, I can barely say some of the words. That means like got him to come. So if you're luring someone, you're like getting them to do what you want them to do. By like maybe getting their favorite thing. So like if I wanted Molly to come down here, I could lure her down by putting treats all the way down and she would come. They spent hours of fun together, and it was the greatest day 2 friends could have. When it was time to go home, LuLa felt terribly sad. Soon she would have to move away and leave Bean forever. The next morning, LuLa felt miserable as she packed her things. She was already missing Bean a great deal. So LuLa put some pickles, potatoes, and crackers in a box and set off to see Bean one last time. But Bean wasn't in his pool. She couldn't find him anywhere. LuLa sat beside the empty rock pool for ages. That means for a long time. But she never got the chance to say goodbye. On moving day, LuLa watched her mom and dad pack the last of their belongings, that means like your items, your stuff that belongs to you, into their car. They looked as sad as she felt. Then came the roar of bulldozers. "LuLa," her parents called, "it's time for us to go." Excuse me. But LuLa wouldn't go. She couldn't. This was their home, and not just her family's. This stretch of beach was home to millions of creatures like her friend Bean. So LuLa marched over to the bulldozers. "I'm not going anywhere," she shouted. The men laughed. "I mean it," LuLa yelled. But the bulldozers crept forward, puffing black smoke into the air. It was no use. LuLa turned to get one last look at her house. and there was Bean, bigger than 10 elephants. Oh my goodness. He curled around LuLa's home the way he curled around her finger the first day until they met. The men stopped laughing and raced away, leaving their bulldozers behind. LuLa still lives in her house with her parents, and there is no highway on the beach. Of course, the bulldozers came back. 3 more times, actually, but each time Bean chased them away. LuLa still walks along the sand every day, searching for interesting things and animals that need looking after. And most days, Bean swims along in the shallows. They couldn't be happier. Okay, so why do we think that Alex Latimer wrote this book, LuLa and the Sea Monster? I really like the pictures in this book. Do we think it's to entertain? The author wants the reader to enjoy their writing. To persuade. The author is trying to make you feel, think, or believe as they do. Or to inform. The author gives you information about a topic. Which one do you think? I'm stuck between these two. Entertain and actually, you're gonna be like, oh gosh, here we go. She thinks it's both, and I do think it's both. I do think the author was trying to entertain us with this story. They just wanted us to enjoy the writing. They wanted us to enjoy the pictures, the vocabulary. They wanted us to enjoy the story, and I did. It was a great story. But I also think the author had a little bit of this going on. Persuade. I think the author is trying to maybe persuade people into not destroying communities that have all these wonderful creatures in them, and to get people to not destroy them, to think like them. This was probably a fun way of doing it, and the author might not have come out right and said like, hey, don't destroy beautiful communities for highways, but I think that was a little bit of his point, and it was in there just a little. So I really hope that you enjoyed reading About Mammals and LuLa and the Sea Monster. And remember that author's purpose can be used as a skill that can be used in fiction and nonfiction. Okay, you guys are getting really good at analyzing these books. And I have 2 more books. Well, 1 more tomorrow, 2 more the next day that we will be able to analyze and figure out what is the author's purpose, right? My purpose today was to teach you how to analyze fiction and nonfiction. So I hope that you have the best day, and I will see you back here tomorrow, ready to learn. Bye, friends.
Teaching in Room 9 is made possible with support of Bank of America, Dana Brown Charitable Trust, Emerson, and viewers like you.